Say you've got an expensive German luxury car, and it leaks a ton of oil and has a ton of warning lights on the instrument cluster. Now, a smart person might get rid of the car before it turns into a money pit on them. Or you could foolishly spend hundreds of dollars on replacement parts and try to fix it yourself. And that's exactly what I'm going to do on this episode of Josh's Car Corner. So in this episode, I'm going to be working on the car that I like so much that I actually bought it twice. If you remember from a couple of years back, this is the car I bought to get me through winter. This is a 2000 Audi 8.6, 2.7 twin turbo all-wheel drive with a rare 6-speed manual transmission. And it is an enjoyable car to drive. It's a lot of fun, gets good mileage, quiet, smooth, comfortable, but like any German car, it's fiddly and it's got its little foibles that need to be taken care of. When I bought the car 2 years ago, I ended up replacing all the front suspension, fixing little trim pieces and just cosmetic things here and there. Did replace a bunch of seals and gaskets on the top of the engine to stop oil leaking. And before I sold the car to a buddy of mine and left for Arizona, we put a new timing belt in it. So this car, in mechanical terms, is ready to go for another 100,000 miles. However, in his care, some other things popped up that now need addressing. It developed fuel leaks through the fuel injectors. All the seals had dried out. He fixed that. But then it had a problem with the ABS where one of the ABS sensors was freaking out and kicking in the ABS way too early, which could actually cause a dramatic reduction in braking to where you might not be able to stop when you need to. So his solution to it, because he couldn't afford to have somebody diagnose it and fix it properly, was just to unplug the ABS sensor. And what was discovered afterwards is when you do that, yeah, it does shut off the ABS, but it also disables the airbags and the traction control system, so you have nothing. And you get 4 new pretty warning lights on the dash as a result of it. So I am going to be fixing all of that and fixing a lot of other things on this car. And also, something that's been wrong ever since I bought the car and only discovered this past week. This right here, spidery looking thing, is actually the crankcase ventilation system for the entire car. Now on most cars, especially if you're a person from the 90s and you're used to working on cars just when electronic fuel injection came out, your PCV valve was just this little silver thing with a 90-degree rubber elbow that went from the lower intake back into the front of the engine to recirculate crankcase ventilation. Or it went from a valve cover to the intake to draw crankcase pressure out of the engine. Well, this car, because it's boosted, has got these hoses going everywhere. These two go to both valve covers. This one goes to the block itself. This one goes to the intake manifold, and this is where all the main vacuum comes from to draw everything back in. This one goes to what's called the N75 valve on the Audi. It is actually the boost control valve, and the vacuum is drawn from there. And then you got this one. This is supposed to go all the way to the front of the intake manifold and not connect to the manifold. No. Connect to another rubber fitting that's got a line coming off the intake manifold, and then another rubber thing that this is supposed to slide into to provide your vacuum. So it is a plumbing nightmare under one of these cars, and anybody with a brain in their head would steer clear of them and not even bother with the hassle. Fortunately, I don't have a brain in my head, and I really like cars and I really like working on them, so I'm going to fix this thing properly. And what I'm going to use to fix it is actually sitting right here. I ordered this from a company. This is made by O34 Motorsport. It is a new system to replace all the PCV lines under the hood. And instead of using a combination of rubber lines and that flexible plastic that eventually will get hard and brittle and crack and break apart, as did on this thing, this is all done with silicone hosing that is not going to dry out and rot. and you replace everything on the engine, and there's a couple other parts here that are missing that I have to attach once I get it on there. But that's going to fix all of the problems with this thing leaking oil, because the reason this car leaks oil so much is because there's no vacuum to draw the pressure out of the crankcase. So the crankcase just builds up pressure and it pushes oil past all of the seals on the valve covers, on the ignition coils, around the timing set, because that pressure has no way to escape. It needs to be drawn back in by the turbos through the intake pipe, and that hasn't been happening. That hasn't been happening for 2 years. I thought I fixed it back when I owned the car back then, but then just playing with it last week, I found out that one hose that goes under right here, well, I never knew where that went, and I never knew that it was broken. And it's been broken this whole time, and now it leaks oil so bad, it leaves puddles everywhere you park it. So that has to be fixed, and it's gonna get fixed with this. Now, along with this is gonna be kind of an ongoing thing. I also have to repair the brakes, but rather than just stop at replacing that ABS sensor, I know it needs a lot more stuff. I knew the calipers needed to be rebuilt, but back then there was no kit to rebuild the calipers on these cars, because this car, because it's an Audi, has very special Lucas 2-piston calipers, and there were no rebuild kits available in 2014 when I originally got this car. Fortunately, the guys at ECS Tuning, the ones who I got parts for the BMW for, the ones I got parts for this thing for 2 years ago, were able to hook me up. They now sell a rebuild kit for the Lucas HP2 calipers, and I'm going to be rebuilding those, and you're going to see me do it. I'm also going to replace all of the rubber brake lines with braided stainless steel, because that's just what I do, because I worry about that kind of thing. They are 16-year-old lines, and they probably are stretching, and they are definitely going to be drying out. And I'm also going to replace all the pads and the rotors right away, so this thing is going to have brand new brakes, and it's going to be ready to go another 100,000 miles, 200,000 miles, maybe more. Mechanically, this thing is still absolutely sound. So if I just fix all the little things around it that are broken, this is going to turn out to be a really nice car once again. So that's what we're going to get started on. So one of the things that I love about this kit from 034 Motorsports is the instructions. They're online and they're absolutely hilarious. I like it when companies have a sense of humor, and these guys definitely do. Tools needed. Hands, opposable thumbs are required. 12mm socket, hose clamp, driver or flathead screwdriver, box cutter, don't worry, it's not for your wrists. Ooh, I love that. Step 0, open the hood, take a quick glance at the engine bay before cursing at whoever decided to fit so many things into such a small place. Look again to see if your engine covers are still intact. If you have at least 2 out of 3 engine covers attached properly using the factory clips, take the supplied Gold Star sticker and apply it to your refrigerator. Let the feeling of pride overcome you. If you do not meet the requirements for gold sticker bearing, destroy the supplied sticker and hang your head in shame. To be fair, I have the valve covers, or the engine covers, but I took them off because I was maintaining stuff, so don't judge. So, step 1. Remove the 3 factory engine covers and remove the bolts. Already done that. Take the Y pipe off. Already done that. Remove the PRV. Try not to break the clip, which is clearly an elaborate German test of intellect. And they're right. I got the ones off on the valve covers just fine, but the one on the engine block, not happening. That broke to shreds, but I'm not reusing it, so it's not a big deal. Step 3, make sure everything is disconnected from it. Remove the Y pipe. It may put up somewhat of a fight, but you will prevail. Yell, "Do you even lift, bro?" right in its face. Set it aside. So yes, that's all done already. Remove the valve cover, breather hoses from both valve covers. Oh, one other thing I need to mention. Yeah, I do these videos, and yeah, I try to show you the right way to do it, but that doesn't mean I always do. For example, when I was trying to get this stupid assembly off, I accidentally put my screwdriver in between the engine block and another Y fitting that was plastic holding a bunch of vacuum lines together for the turbo lines, and I broke it. And I had to replace that with something with a new T-junction and put it all back together. So I'm imperfect too. I admit it. So unplug the electrical connector to the N75 valve, remove the vacuum line, already done. Next step, disconnect the breather hoses running from the factory spider hoses. Congratulations, you can now remove everything. It's already out, so now we're going to get on to the next steps here. Remove the PRV from your spider hose assembly. PRV is this guy. We will be reusing that. This connects to the intake Y pipe. Replicate your spider hose using the hoses supplied in our kit. So what I have to do is, number one, this guy goes right back on here, but I have to adapt it using this right here. Actually, it goes there, but I still have to adapt it. Late check valve to intake manifold hose. I have the early check valve style. Late PRV hose, early PRV hose. So I just got to hose clamp that, put that back on. No problem. And then this is going to go to the N75 valve instead of the hose that used to go there. This is the one that I'm still trying to figure out. The late PRV hose. I'm thinking this is just all bent up from shipping. This wasn't shipped in a great box. All the hoses were kind of wrapped up and tied around each other, and they're still trying to stretch back out. I think this is supposed to go like this, according to this diagram anyway. So we'll get this all together and see what it looks like. Okay, so first thing I got to do is install this check valve right here. This is what goes right on the top, and then this is going to go to that pipe that goes all the way to the front and back to the intake manifold. I'll show you right here. It's a check valve, so you suck it and it opens and closes like that. So that's going to go right there. And they give you all the hose clamps you need to do the job, and you could use a flat blade screwdriver, or you could do it the proper way and get the appropriate sized nut driver to turn these things. Works a lot better. All right, now this is the hose that I think is going to go to the front, and looking at the orientation of it, I think what's supposed to happen is it's supposed to connect to the check valve like this and then work its way up to the front. So I'm going to put it on this way initially just to see how it fits before I get it all in there. Wow, that fits tight. Might not even need a frickin' hose clamp on that one. All right, I think she's ready to install. Okay, so bringing this over. Now the one nice thing about this system is it gets rid of a lot of these stupid connections, and these much bigger hoses will just slide over the fittings coming out of the valve covers and the engine block. Now it says the first thing to do is to put the breather on the engine block. That's this big one. It goes way down here on the bottom. I can see it take a great deal of patience. And the one thing I'm thinking about already is, even once I get this thing on here, how the hell am I going to get a hose clamp on it? But I guess this is why I get paid the big bucks. Or because I don't do ad sharing on YouTube, this is why I get paid no bucks and get to suffer for your enjoyment. Now, why the heck won't you go on there? Could it be, quite possibly, that steel oil feed line that's within a millimeter of the fitting, thereby making it so the hose will not just simply slide over the connection? Why, yes, I do believe that is the problem. If you're watching this and you've done this hose assembly replacement, please share your experience with me. I'd love to know how things went for you doing this. Oh my God, this is ridiculous. This is utterly insane and absurd. I want you guys to see the problem here and why I am struggling so much. You're gonna see the fitting right under that hose going across right there. There's a metal turbo line right next to it, right there, making it quite difficult to get the room to get this on. This is insane. Okay, well, after about 10 minutes of suffering, I managed to get that back hose tightened down. I got the one for the driver's side valve cover tightened down. Now I'm working on, this is the N75 right here. This is the junction for all the turbo lines. This one has got to come off, and this little thing right here has got to come off because it slides into a little rail here to hold it all in place. But they use the same kind of clips you would find on CV joints to hold it all together, and there's no easy way to get those apart. Only two ways I found to do it are to either get a screwdriver in here and twist that whole assembly apart and hope that you can get the fingers loose and then you can undo it, or take a side cutter, and if you're lucky, you can get in there and you can cut one end of it, and then it'll... Ooh, that snapped. Oh! Almost as if I knew what I was doing, and it'll come right off. See, this right here slides into a bracket right down here. Holds it like this. Not the most brilliant system in the world, but it works. And sure enough, the new hose is substantially bigger than the old one. So, I suspect my N75 valve is now going to be a floating unit. Yeah, I think so. Well, that sucks. But I suppose that's what you gotta do to make this work. And it won't come off. Wow, I told you these things were sticky. Good Lord. Oh! That hurt. And that's bleeding. All right, well, sacrifice some blood to the car gods. Quite a bit of it too. Is that wrapped around something else now? Oh my God. You didn't get to see all this joy the last time I worked on this car. Guys, there's 1, 2, 3 right there. Then there's 4, 5, 6 right there. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Jesus Christ. Das Germans. What are they thinking? No, this is not how it is supposed to work. This is too difficult for the commoner to figure out. Yes, Wolfgang, that is the point. We must make it difficult so they will not try to work on it themselves. They must bring it to the dealer. Yeah, the dealer. They will fix it for a very expensive price. Okay. All of this rigmarole down here is finally all hose clamped in on. The line going to the intake manifold's on. The line running underneath is all hose clamped together. So this is the last one right here. Putting this on. All I gotta do is slide this over the top and it should sit on there quite nicely. And the bloody check valve just went into the hose. Nothing can go easily with this. Nothing at all. I really wonder if this is the average experience of the person who puts this kit on. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's really difficult to work with. Well, it does not look brilliant, but it works. So all I gotta do is replace the Y junction for these 3 tomorrow. And I gotta do something about this crummy piece right here. Yeah, right here. This stupid thing is a T-junction that someone put in because a bypass must have, or a hose splice with barbs on it must have broke here. They put a bolt in here to seal this one, and it's a T-junction. It should just be a straight through. So that's getting replaced tomorrow as well. And once I replace that and the Y block back here, this thing should be ready to fire up again, and my oil leak problem will hopefully be gone. Okay, well, it's about a month later since I last worked on the car. In that time, I have replaced the brakes on all 4 corners. I didn't bother filming doing it because I did it before on the BMW episode. But you can see back there, I've got new braided stainless lines on all 4 corners and brand new pads and rotors. This complicated Audi setup with the 4 individual pads on the front calipers. That's a goofy setup. And then back here, I just had to replace this parking brake cable right here. It was all seized up, and that was at shore. You have to take exhaust shields off underneath to get to it, and you have to take the whole center console apart, obviously, to get to the parking brake mechanism. So the center console, had to take it all apart, and here's the mechanism itself. You have to take it out, take it apart, and it was fun trying to shove the new cable in. That ball that comes through wouldn't come through that little cylinder there initially, and I had to heat that cylinder up really hot and then cover the ball with Sil-Glide and finally managed to get it through. So I got to put this all back together because in about an hour I need to leave to head up to a buddy's house because the Packers are playing the Giants today in the wild card game. Okay, so it is now mid-January. We've been having ice storms, getting rain and then it freezing over and just turning everything into an icy mess. And as you can see, the car is currently melting away right now. It has developed, of course, another new issue. This one being a lot minor, or more minor. It's starting to get an exhaust leak in one of the flex pipes, and I can actually hear it. It's getting slightly loud, but it's still very quiet, and I attribute that to the fact that this is a turbo car, and the turbos absorb a lot of exhaust noise. So all it's doing is getting kind of raspy, and as a matter of fact, if you ever owned a GM front-wheel drive V6 powered car from the 90s, any of those 3.1 or even the supercharged 3.8 cars, and they've got that low-end rasp to them, imagine that with a factory exhaust, and that's what this thing sounds like now, with a hole in the flex pipe. So it actually sounds kind of neat, and it's a little more fun to drive. And I know it's leaking, but I don't really care because it's not leaking into the cabin. It's just making a little more noise, so big whoop. So, but I will eventually probably get that fixed, not by myself because I can't weld, but someone will eventually have to fix that for me. So that's going to do it for this episode. I'm done working on this thing, but I will be filming a new episode very soon. And I will bring you up to speed on what is going to happen during the rest of this winter on the GTO. So once again, thanks for watching Josh's Car Corner, and we will see you guys next time.